witnessing a collaborative recovery and growth. Mr. Denton, the screen is yours.
I can't wait for the opportunity to be with you in Indonesia, and in particular, as an Australian, to be back in Bali, which is always a great resting spot for the people-people relations between Australia and Indonesia. Friends, I've been really struck by the force and the energy that Shinta has brought as the leader of the B20. I was one of the founding members of the B20 and the commencement of this whole process. And what we always wanted and what we always desired was for the B20 to be the opening part of the G20 year. Because if G20 is all about helping global economic growth, the drivers of that growth are the business community. And the fact that the B20 is recognized in Indonesia year as so critical to that it has the honor of being the opening part of the Indonesia G20, I think really reflects the commitment again of President Jokowi to global economic growth. And we can talk a little bit more about inclusiveness in that growth process in a minute or two. So I do want to shout out in particular to Shinta for her leadership. I also, having listened to President Jokowi, want to commend him for the agenda. As Klaus has just said, the way in which President Jokowi has articulated the G20 agenda for Indonesia has struck many as a great and I think timely intervention. Also in the fact that Indonesia, because of the place and the important role it plays within East Asia, within Asia Pacific, within the developing world, within the G77 process and non-aligned movement, it brings a particular voice, a voice that will be listened to and a voice which actually is resonant. What I've always found about engagements with Indonesia, in particular, having been privileged to participate in discussions previously with President Jokowi, is the openness to new ideas. And that was something that was struck me in his opening remarks as well. And I do think, as others have said, this is not just a year for setting out roadmaps for the future, this is a year for action. And one of the things that I know that Indonesia is famous for is actually also now getting things done under President Jokowi. We at the International Chamber of Commerce have been arguing for some time that if you want economic growth to continue and to recover and to move at the level we need, we actually need to bring it about by, first of all, ending this pandemic. And part of that is actually obviously by getting access to vaccines across the world. And we think if economic growth is the key for the G20 and the kind of economic growth that President Jokowi is talking about is important to the leadership of the Indonesian G20, we really would want, and I really call for Indonesia to convene, as a matter of urgency, a leaders level special meeting on pandemic or COVID-19 resilience. We need to ensure that meeting commits to fully funding COVAX so that we can actually ensure that vaccines are available on an equitable and global basis. We need to ensure that we have a proper system to monitor the actual supply chains to enable the therapeutics to be made available, but also importantly the ingredients for the vaccines to be available, not just into, but also out to, for the supply chains to operate. We want a health market monitoring system, information system. We call for this, and this could be a really important part of any special meeting. And of course, the bit that was actually left dangling by so many countries was innovation and access to testing. If we want to learn to live with COVID-19, it doesn't mean we just stop. It doesn't mean that we just put up with things. We also need to change some of our behaviors, and access to testing will become absolutely critical. So we need to ensure that that's not just a Northern Hemisphere opportunity, that's a global opportunity. So ensuring we find ways to bring innovation to that, and so that it can be scaled and the pricing such that it's immediately available, because it will not be a requirement for one test, it will be constant testing. So we need to work on that. So I really would call on Indonesia and the leadership of President Jokowi to give serious consideration at a very early stage of the G20 leadership of Indonesia to the convening of this special heads of government meeting on COVID-19 resilience. The second area, if I could, and this is really important, and I'm so delighted that in a minute I'll be able to engage in discussion with the fabulous Indonesian Mari Penggetsu. But I want to talk a little bit about trade. Of course, the other driver, which is really important for us, is to ensure the revitalisation of global trade. Now, this is an issue which is actually really challenging. We've seen a loss of confidence in the institution, which is the World Trade Organization. We need to re-establish that. We are blessed that Dr. Ngozi is leading that, but of course she can't do it herself. We need leaders to actually facilitate and support that. And one intervention that would be important, again, not talking about the problem, but doing something about it, is to create, from the leadership of G20, a Friends of the Chair group, of a small group of leaders of non-G20 countries who can engage in a process of soundings on how we can actually ensure that we can revitalise the World Trade Organization, the World Trade System, and make it relevant for the 21st century, not just for developed countries, not just for arguments, but to ensure the kind of inclusive growth we want, and ensure that this is linked up to enable the global digital economy to function effectively, to enable climate to be linked in with trade finally, and get the whole global trading movement aligned to action on climate as well. So these are sorts of things that would be absolutely fabulous. A special meeting on COVID-19 resilience, the creation of a Friends of the Chair group focused on the developments necessary to actually ensure we have a functioning multilateral system curated through the WTO that can actually help us push and revitalise trade. Both elements are critical for economic growth, which of course in the end, if we don't have it, we will not be able to have the inclusive economic growth. And let's face it, one of the things that will come out of this is opportunities for the real economy, which is for SMEs to prosper, both by ending the pandemic and secondly by ensuring that a functioning global trade system that they can participate in. So I really would hope, having asked for ideas, of course the International Chamber of Commerce is the world's leading and largest business organization, 45 million companies in more than 130 countries, now more than 2/3 of which are actually in developing and emerging economies. We are devoted to this. We are an institution, the most trusted organization. We are very happy to stand shoulder to shoulder with Indonesia in this year, as we will, and as we are with the B20 process as well. And we're so delighted with so many parts of the ICC family, including Shinta herself, who's actually part of our executive board, chairs our regional committee, and so many members of my board, the executive board of the International Chamber of International Chamber of Commerce, are able to participate in leadership roles in so many of the task forces that have been established. We bring our full heft in support of the work of the Indonesia B20, and the work of the Indonesia B20 is really all about ensuring that the Indonesia G20 and its commitment to actually support inclusive economic growth will actually be given life to. This is a great opportunity for me to now introduce Dr. Mari Pangestu. Many of you will know Mari, particularly in Indonesia, from her period of time as Minister for Trade for Indonesia. And Mari, at the time, of course, of that period was known as one of the most innovative and actually thoughtful ministers of trade on a global basis, and she did so much. And of course, she did more as the Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy. She now, frankly, controls and is responsible for the most important parts, in our view, of the World Bank in what she's doing in terms of global practice groups, external and corporate relations. We're delighted that Mari is able to join us today. I'm also delighted to say that Mari was a former member of the Executive Board of the International Chamber of Commerce. So that the philosophies and the values we have reflected very much in Mari, but the reality is we also reflect very much the values and priorities and I think the spirit that Mari brings to any global conversation. So now it's a great opportunity for me to invite Mari to make a couple of comments, particularly given the role that she plays, in particular the World Bank must play, in order to ensure that we get enough movement in the global economy. And I think it's always helpful when someone like Mari can also talk to us about the global perspectives on this. Let's face it, health policy these days is economic policy, and understanding how all this plays out is really important. So I'm going to ask Mari now to give a presentation on the way in which the global economy is moving, and also I think we'll show you the unevenness which has been picked up before in some of the other comments we've seen. So if I can introduce you, Mari, to make a few comments, and then we'll have a bit of a Q&A afterwards. Thank you.